You're now unmuted, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Alex, and as usual, all the great folks at USCA. I know it's a difficult time for you all, and we all have lost a great industry leader and voice in Barry Worthington. As you know, DOE has a long-standing and great relationship with USCA. Barry was very instrumental in that relationship, and we wish the USCA family and his family all the best. So with that, it's my great pleasure that I get to kick off this webinar and discuss the Office of Clean Coal and Carbon Management Strategic Vision. Well, you know, one of the great attributes of my job is daily engagement with some of the most talented and dedicated people I've ever had the pleasure to work with. And you're going to hear from all of them later in this webinar. But the best part of my job isn't just working with great folks, it's the ability to ask them to do all the hard work. And believe me, I take advantage of that, and they do all the hard work, so all this is to their credit. So today I want to talk about my office's vision for a 21st century, not only coal future, but the future of fossil energy here in the United States. Next slide, please. You know, usually, you know, I'm not from the government. I've spent most of my life in the private sector. You know, usually a strategic vision document produced by a government agency finds its way to the round file fairly quickly, especially when you read daily that fossil fuels are a thing of the past, especially coal. You know, and I could understand that. My response and that of our team is the Office of Clean Coal and Carbon Management is more relevant than ever. Our country's energy future is at a crossroads. Over the past few years, it's fashionable for states, policymakers, and the such to declare that we'll be carbon-free by this year or that, or we'll be net neutral, et cetera, et cetera. You know, usually decades away when those same folks won't be held responsible for their actions. We've heard it all, believe me. What they never do is tell you how you can achieve those results. They make it sound so easy. All you have to do is put up a bunch of windmills, heavily subsidized, I might add, or solar that does nothing for you at night, and then mix it all together with battery technology that doesn't exist. And by the way, they never tell you how much it will cost. The Office of Clean Coal and Carbon Management is uniquely equipped to expedite the transition to a low carbon economy while maintaining U.S. energy dominance. This vision addresses current challenges and explores promising new uses for coal. This vision was developed to reflect the work that we are doing here and now, and also create a clear vision of what our office can accomplish in the coming years. This vision responds to our current priorities as a nation and to current markets. This vision is both realistic and achievable. So, next slide, please. There's a false narrative out there that fossil energy in general and coal specifically is disappearing and renewables will magically fill the void. Here's reality. You can see by 2050, over 9 billion short tons of coal will be produced and burned in the world. That's an increase of slightly more than 1 billion tons a year from 2019 production. In the United States, coal is a four-letter word. Public perception, misinformation, market forces, and industry competition have teamed up against coal. A lot of negative public perception comes from ignorance of the many benefits coal provides to people in the U.S. and around the world. Even so, coal remains a vital resource for grid security and reliability, as recent blackouts in California demonstrated. In the United States, coal production will be down from 2019. But despite all the challenges, in 2040, coal will provide about 20% of the U.S. power generation. Fossil energy touches every sector of American life: transportation, food, clean water, the construction material of every building in the world, even the cell phones that we use every day. You cannot have a modern, developed, and clean economy without fossil fuels, including coal. Those who say you can get rid of all fossil energy are unrealistic. The first question you have to ask these groups are, what are you willing to give up? The irony is, and the cheapest, most reliable way to decarbonize the U.S. economy is by using fossil fuels. The real solution is to use technology and innovation to move to a future where carbon-free fossil energy is a reality. Next slide. Before I turn over the presentation over to Angelos and the rest of the team, I'd like to introduce and emphasize the mission and vision that drive our work and set the tone for the strategic vision. First, our vision is advanced, affordable, 21st century U.S. fossil energy systems and products that stimulate a robust global energy economy with carbon neutral or net negative emissions. For example, our flagship program, Coal First, is developing coal power plants to serve the 21st century electricity grid, generating zero or near zero emissions of carbon dioxide. These small modular plants will adapt to changing power demand, produce hydrogen and other critical products, and provide energy storage to enhance grid reliability and resilience. And then finally, our mission is to drive research and development and adoption of advanced, affordable, reliable energy systems and products from coal and other fossil resources with carbon neutral or net negative emissions. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to kick this off. I look forward to answering any of your questions later on. And I think I'm handing it off to John Latinsky or Carlos or Angelos. So have at it. Thank you very much.
All right. This is John Latinsky. Next slide, please. So as part of that transformation, the DOE, NETL, and Fossil Energy Office have been doing decades of work on hydrogen. And hydrogen is really a critical piece to transforming that energy system. But you can't do that economically without fossil energy is what we're looking at. So we're starting to look across the entire program, both coal and natural gas, and the Oil and Gas Office, at producing hydrogen either by blending different feedstocks, even with natural gas, to finally get to a net negative emissions future. So obviously you heard of different colors of hydrogen. There's low carbon hydrogen, which they call blue hydrogen, which includes CCS. We have programs in gasification as well as steam methane reforming with carbon capture that can significantly reduce the carbon footprint of hydrogen. Carbon neutral is also obviously electrolysis, but it's actually difficult to get to carbon neutral if you look at the full life cycle of renewable energy, but it still is very low carbon. And then finally, what we term as white hydrogen, but really could be considered just net negative hydrogen, which includes the gasification or pyrolysis or gasification of biomass coal with MSW, or even just straight MSW with biomass and plastics to actually remove the CO2 from those products and actually get to a net negative hydrogen production, which could be used for electricity or other products. Next slide, please. So hydrogen from fossil energy is clearly the lowest cost source of hydrogen today. If you look at SMR with 90% CCS, or coal gasification with CCS, or coal mix of biomass with CCS and 90% capture, it clearly is the lowest cost source of hydrogen. And this is without future R&D. We think we can reduce those costs significantly further through all of the different programs working together to reduce costs for gasification, post-combustion capture, or pre-combustion capture, and other technologies. But what it'll enable is a low carbon economy. Actually, you can use that hydrogen in the industrial sector or the power markets, or even if there's significant need in the transport markets. It allows us to be very flexible, especially if there's a lot of variable renewable generation on the grid, where you can move from power production to poly generation. But what's really needed is utility scale storage. There are a few examples where there is underground storage or large scale storage, but there really needs to be research on developing the technologies for the infrastructure for bulk energy or bulk electricity generation with hydrogen. We see there's real advancements that have been made over the last few decades on hydrogen turbines. We have a goal of getting to 100% hydrogen turbines either mid this decade to the end of the decade, and then looking at really net negative emissions when it's necessary out through 2035. Next slide, please. So last 6 to 9 months, we developed a hydrogen strategy, and we released that back in June when we had a webinar featured through USEA that lays out fossil energy strategy for enabling a hydrogen economy. What that was built on was over $1 billion investment over the last few decades, conducting R&D on turbines, gasification, solid oxide fuel cells, and pre-combustion R&D. We feel that we've had a goal of 90% capture, but we feel there's a small incremental cost that we could actually significantly reduce those emissions and get to close to 99% CO2 capture, which would enable both carbon neutral and even negative hydrogen production. So there's 4 major areas within the strategic plan that are highlighted. Clearly, number 1 is developing technologies for carbon neutral hydrogen production with gasification or reforming, large-scale transport infrastructure, looking at using the existing infrastructure with blending hydrogen or moving towards 100% hydrogen in those pipelines, large-scale on-site and geologic hydrogen storage, which is absolutely going to be necessary for bulk energy production or electricity production, and the hydrogen use for the electricity generation, fuels, and manufacturing. So looking at taking that hydrogen from fossil energy and making it pervasive through the economy. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit of an eye chart. I apologize, but I'd encourage you to download that strategic plan. And Alex, if we could provide a link to that after this meeting, that would be good. But this really just talks a little bit more in detail about the focus areas that we're looking at. If you start at the top, which is hydrogen production, that's obviously key. So from natural gas and from steam methane reforming, looking at production from coal and co-firing of biomass, looking at high-strength materials and, for actually moving CO2 around the country, and actually looking at storage of that materials in high-pressure tanks or in geologic formations. Make it so that we can establish hydrogen as a critical feedstock for industry, and then, to basically ensure that we have energy security and economic prosperity and resiliency. And this is key. We as fossil energy, see it as it's going to be an economic decision on where you're going to get your hydrogen from. And right now, it looks like for now and in the future, fossil energy is the lowest cost source of that hydrogen, even with CCS included. Next slide, please. So I talked a little bit, and I won't go into too much more detail, but there is specific R&D that our office, and you'll hear more about from the division directors, where hydrogen is weaved into our program plans. Hydrogen production, as I mentioned, pre-combustion capture technologies in our CCS area, development of gasification systems for blended fuels such as biomass and waste plastics, advanced turbines so that we can get to that 100% hydrogen goal, reversible SOFCs. We've conducted about 20 years and invested hundreds of millions of dollars in solid oxide fuel cells, but we're really looking at making these reversible systems so that we can shift from hydrogen production to electricity production so they're more flexible when either of those products is needed. And then specifically for our office, we're looking at bulk above ground hydrogen storage to meet demand, replacing maybe oil storage on site for hydrogen turbines so that you can have fuel security when other sources are not available or even when pipelines aren't available. Next slide, please. And so in summary, on my points, we're really looking to kind of transform this whole energy system. And so hydrogen is one major element of that, but we're looking at future plants to make them carbon neutral and net negative, looking at the existing fleet, because we can learn a lot or test our technologies on an existing fleet to inform how we would design the plan of the future. And obviously hydrogen is going to play a large role in that, but water and the environment and all the other potential impacts that we need to mitigate and make sure that there's no adverse impact on the environment is extremely important to the office. And I'm not sure who I'm handing it off to next. Apologize for the transition. Can you go to the next slide, please?
That's me, John.
Okay, Bhima. Thank you.
Thank you, John. This is Bhima Sastry. I'd like to briefly talk about how our office plans this transformation of coal plants as they continue to provide baseload power into the future, as many studies have shown. And to help design this 21st century coal plant, our focus is really on modularity. The acronym FIRST has the letter S, which stands for small, which is a modular power plant. And we believe that we can get there with innovations in modular concepts that include components such as turbines, energy storage, and novel materials that are coming to the marketplace. We believe that collectively these efforts will help the power plants operate more efficiently, and they complement the grid and make all of this happen while being carbon neutral. So the modular concepts include what is depicted in the slide here, and among other things. For instance, if you take a look at turbines, the R&D on combustion, aerodynamics, heat transfer materials for advanced turbines based on all the power cycles looks like we can push the limits of the turbine performance. How we do that? We push the temperatures to go above 3,100 degrees Fahrenheit with low NOx emissions and increased power output and efficiencies that can reach above 65%. Those are a class apart. But the R&D that we invest in helps these turbines achieve some of those goals. And such new designs can be incorporated into power cycles that use, potentially CO2 as a working fluid instead of steam, or they could be used in advanced ultra-supercritical or direct power extraction type of power cycles. So we believe that such advanced technologies also can include, materials composites like ceramic matrix composites, which, the airfoils and the combustion components are made with that. And the advanced low NOx micro mixers and combustion systems that go into these turbines. We're also looking at novel types of pressure gain combustion type of technology. There's a lot going on in terms of what we're trying to do in R&D to make this modular power plant of the future. We believe that ultra high efficiency, rapid ramp rates are very essential for this new power plants. And of course, minimal water consumption. And as Lou was mentioning, we want it to be carbon neutral or net negative in emissions. And they should be able to take up more than just one resource, coal. They should be able to, we're designing them so that they could fire with natural gas, biomass, other renewables, including municipal solid waste and mixed plastics. We believe that, these are all possible. Next slide, please. So this is a story about the energy storage and what fossil energy is just trying to do. So Department of Energy and fossil energy are part of a $158 million advanced storage initiative that was part of the FY20 congressional budget. And this was to address the energy storage grant challenge. So as part of that, we're conducting workshops, we're funding R&D in projects that can provide the scale of tens of gigawatts of energy storage. Typically, these energy storage, the picture depicts, a lithium-ion type of a battery storage. This has been made popular by Tesla's involvement in Australia, where they kind of demonstrated that they could do this at the gigawatt scale. But we are pursuing a lot of new technologies in energy storage, including thermal storage, liquid air storage, compressed air, even other new technologies that include supercritical compressed CO2 and also hydrogen storage. There's more of that that will be discussed in the later slides, or Regis will be covering that a little bit. So in a sense, we are creating flexible storage solutions that include thermal, chemical, and electrolytic and battery storage. And we are funding R&D to explore early stage concepts in energy storage. and that's what this slide depicts. So next slide, please. So while we are helping design the future power plants, we're doing everything we can to improve the efficiency of existing plants. We have several R&D efforts that can help improve and modernize the existing plants. Our goal really is to increase the efficiency of a typical power plant in the existing fleet by 5%. Basically, that increases the baseline efficiency in 2017, which was 31%, to about 32.5%. How we do this is by improving operations and efficiencies of existing coal-fired plants. This improved efficiency also helps improve cost competitiveness. It optimizes maintenance, upgrades, so that the plant can compete in the modern grid, and be flexible, reliable, and resilient. And how we're doing this is through several fronts in R&D that include advanced materials for severe environments. We're looking at advanced maintenance and repair and how we can do this with a new coal plant boiler technologies that have rapid, low-cost repair, leveraging advanced manufacturing and robotic inspection type of technologies. We have sensors and controls that have an R&D component that helps these power plants improve efficiency and performance. We do a lot of computational analysis work and technology, big data analytics of plant management, and we've demonstrated at actual coal plants that these computational analysis can actually improve the heat rate of existing plants. We provide a variety of decision tools that increase the capability for more rapid cycling of these existing plants. So what we believe is that by helping these existing plants operate efficiently for the next few years, we're helping transition them into these coal plants of the future that we're helping design. Next slide, please. So this is one of the last topics that I will be covering before I hand it over to Mark, to Regis. This slide actually shows all the with all the improvements we mentioned, that I mentioned about being done. We have a clear focus on protecting the environment. How we plan to do this is to accelerate the development and use of efficient technologies which reduce emissions. Basically, this also includes freshwater use and reuse, cooling and heating and heat recovery systems, and long-term monitoring of water quality. We believe that's all part of the protecting the environment narrative that we have in developing these new power plants. The plan also is to reduce non-CO2 criteria pollutants and solid and liquid emissions. And by 2025, the goal is to achieve in-practice use of advanced emissions reduction technologies in plants. So the picture shown there talks about the Water Security Grand Challenge, which is a White House initiative that the U.S. Department of Energy is leading. And it has several goals in it, just to name a few. They're launching desalination technologies that deliver a cost-competitive clean water. We're looking at transforming the energy sector so that the produced water from the waste becomes a resource. We're looking at achieving near zero water impact for new thermoelectric plants. We're looking at doubling the resource recovery for municipal wastewater. And one of the goals is also to develop small modular energy water systems for urban and rural tribal use. It's a document that's available on the DOE website. And I think, Alex, if you can also share the website details of where the Water Security Grand Challenge, after the seminar, I think it would help the audience also look up what we're doing there. So with that, I hand it over to Regis, I believe. Regis?
No, it's Mark Akevich, FEMA. So thanks, and just to provide a little bit of context, Bima just covered focus area 1, and I'm covering focus area 2. The strategic vision has 4 focus areas, so I'll be, for the remainder of my time speaking, I will be covering focus area 2, which is managing carbon with confidence. And what we're looking at are advanced technologies to cost effectively capture and securely store CO2 across the economy. While previously and past efforts have primarily focused on the power sector and primarily coal, that is still an area of emphasis, as Bima had mentioned with the Coal First project. We are, however, expanding our portfolio to also incorporate CCUS for natural gas and also industrial sources. And as can be seen by the 4 topic areas on this slide, we're also investigating negative emissions technologies such as direct air capture and applying CCUS to biomass and coal and biomass co-firing concepts to achieve negative emissions as well. I will be going through the next several slides. We'll cover each of these 4 topic areas. So if we go to the next slide. So in terms of capturing carbon, what we are looking at is still focused on reducing the energy penalty and lowering the capital and operating costs of the technology. We are currently pursuing second generation and long-term transformational technologies that can reduce the costs to less than 30% below the state-of-the-art technology. And what we are looking at are addressing key technical challenges of capture efficiency, things such as the thermodynamics, improving pressure drop, optimizing the process, achieving faster kinetics, so we have faster, more selective chemical and physical separation processes. We're also looking at scaling these technologies. We recently made selections from a funding opportunity announcement where we selected 4 projects to conduct small-scale engineering studies. And per my earlier comments, 2 of those are on coal-fired applications and 2 are for natural gas applications as well. And they're testing at various locations, including our National Carbon Capture Center located in Wilsonville, Alabama. We are also looking at ways to leverage advances in enabling technologies such as machine learning and advanced manufacturing, and applying computational and simulation tools through initiatives such as the Carbon Capture Simulation Initiative for Industrial Impact, or CCSI-2, which is a consortium of national labs and universities that are really looking at ways to accelerate the development and deployment of carbon capture technologies. So if we go to the next slide. So the second component of looking at our transformational technology development is looking at CO2 storage. And we've had over 20 years of work in the CCUS space. We've shown that it's safe and secure to store the CO2. This has been validated through various projects that we've conducted through not just DOE efforts, but that we've seen globally as well through partners in Norway and throughout the world. So what we're really looking at is how can we optimize the process to make it more economic, affordable, and reliable for long-term storage. We're focusing on transformational sensing technologies and monitoring systems. For example, looking at ways that we can apply advanced data telemetry capabilities to look at things such as the state of stress within the subsurface. We're also looking at better ways to characterize the subsurface to do it cheaper and faster. Some of the technologies right now, such as seismic, while they provide great information and they're great tools today, we're looking at ways that we can maybe make improvements and facilitate more rapid and cheaper efforts to characterize the subsurface. We're also looking at unconventional reservoirs for CO2 storage. we've typically been looking at enhanced oil recovery and saline formations, your things very typical, such as, say, sandstones for saline storage. We're also looking at other opportunities, such as residual oil zones. Most of our work has been onshore. We're starting to investigate offshore efforts as well. And then also looking at resources such as basalts, which have more rapid mineralization and can ensure more safe and secure storage of CO2 by rapidly mineralizing the CO2 in the subsurface. We're also looking at ways to, again, deploy enabling technologies such as machine learning and artificial intelligence. And one of the key initiatives that we have right now is what we call SMART, which stands for Science-Informed Machine Learning to Accelerate Real-Time Decisions for Carbon Storage. And the SMART initiative is pulling together the capabilities and researchers from the national labs, universities, but also tying it in with field projects that we've previously conducted through the regional carbon sequestration partnerships and the new regional initiatives to really try and advance the capabilities within the subsurface and in terms of carbon storage to really accelerate and move this towards real-time decision making in the subsurface environment. If we go to the next slide. So our second research direction within managing carbon with confidence is looking at scaling up CCUS. And the map shows some of our more recent efforts in this area. And what I want to draw your attention to is we currently have 9 FEED studies, front-end engineering design studies, 5 on coal and 4 on natural gas that were awarded last year, which are looking at not just conventional capture technologies, but some of the technologies that have advanced through our R&D program as well, that are at a point where they're looking to be ready for commercial deployment. In addition to those 9 capture FEED studies, we've had our Carbon Safe program, which stands for Carbon Storage Assurance Facility Enterprise. And we initially started this several years ago with a phase 1 or pre-feasibility stage where we had, I believe, over a dozen pre-feasibility studies to look at ways that we can maximize or facilitate storage beyond, say, that testing phase, but looking at commercial deployment and commercial scale, and looking at storage opportunities that have capabilities to store 50 million metric tons of CO2 or greater. We started off with over a dozen studies in phase 1. We had 6 phase 2 studies, which are feasibility studies, and we recently awarded 5 studies for phase 3, which we're looking to get these projects more moving towards that Class 6 permit to inject. So these are all looking at saline storage opportunities. In addition to these projects, we also recently selected 5 engineering feasibility studies for industrial sources as well. 2 of those are on cement, 1 is on steel, and 1 is on hydrogen production. And we also have 1 looking at an ethanol facility that's focused on achieving negative emissions technologies as well. So we're really looking to start moving some of our technologies out towards that commercial scale and commercial deployment, and looking to take advantage of the market opportunities that present themselves, whether it's through enhanced oil recovery or policy and tax incentives and mechanisms like the 45Q tax credit. So if we go to the next slide. So the third research area is looking at direct air capture and negative emissions technologies. And as I mentioned, DOE, we've been working on carbon capture technologies for over 2 decades. And a lot of the technologies that we're developing have applicability across a wide variety of sectors, not just power, but industry as well. And we're looking to advance the work and take those learnings and apply them to the areas such as direct air capture and bioenergy with CCS. We recently selected 18 projects with DOE investment of $21 million for direct air capture technologies. Some of these technologies are looking at what we would consider, say, more first generation type technologies and their applications, and how can we make improvements for those technologies and to make them more efficient and to help lower the cost. We're also investing in second generation type technologies that can help make advancements in new materials, processes, and systems to further reduce the cost for enabling direct air capture deployment. We're also, as I mentioned, looking at building our capabilities on bioenergy and coal and biomass co-firing with CCS to achieve negative emissions as well, applying our conventional or our carbon capture R&D portfolio to these additional areas. In addition, we're also looking at and investigating mineralization concepts, things such as enhanced weathering, and looking at industrial waste and mine tailings and waste that can potentially offer some low-hanging fruit opportunities to achieve negative emissions of CO2. So if we go to the next slide. So finally, our fourth pillar is, or fourth research direction is looking at creating new products from captured CO2. And we're looking at ways that to create this additional value from CO2 once we've captured it, how can we create added value? And we're looking at a wide variety of processes and concepts, from mineralization and turning it into carbonates and other building materials or construction materials, investigating biological approaches such as algae to convert CO2 into other products, whether those are resins, pharmaceuticals, or fuels and chemicals. And we're also looking at more early stage concepts such as both thermochemical and electrochemical pathways that can essentially crack the CO2 molecule and create additional fuels, chemicals, solid carbon products out of CO2. And we're looking to develop these technologies to support markets in that 2030 timeframe. We recently selected, I believe it was 17, or I'm sorry, I think it was 11 projects at $17 million in the carbon utilization space, looking at many of the concepts that are depicted here right on the slide. So a lot of exciting work occurring in the CCUS space, and looking to make an impact and to scale the technology and move it more towards commercialization. So with that, I will turn it over to Regis Conrad.
Thank you, Mark. And thank everybody who is attending. It's a pleasure to be presenting our vision to you. And many of you who know me know that I am the Division Director of Advanced Energy Systems. And although today I'm going to be presenting to you Reimaging Coal and Hydrogen, I just wanted to remind you that the Advanced Energy Division focuses on gasification, advanced combustion, turbines, solid oxide fuel cells, extreme environment materials, sensors and controls, and water management. And those are important to us. Those are important to our vision, but because of time, we couldn't cover everything. But I encourage you to look at our vision to see what where we are going with those particular programs. I am going to talk about reimaging of coal and discuss a little bit more about our hydrogen program, how we utilize our coal as a valuable asset for just not burning for power, but also looking at the carbon to create high value products. We know that hydrogen can be an attractive zero carbon fuel, and it is an important part of our comprehensive strategy to ensure affordable, secure, clean energy for our domestic resources. With we've noticed that there are various and a lot of hydrogen strategies coming out now and being released. And it's clear that hydrogen is going to be important to our future, both to America and globally. We have been working on hydrogen for years, and we recognize that one of the challenges in developing a hydrogen economy is the cost. Producing hydrogen at a low cost, delivering it, being able to deliver it, being able to store it, and then ultimately new ways to utilize hydrogen. Fossil fuels offer probably the greatest opportunity to produce the lowest cost hydrogen. A key goal of our program is to help drive down the cost even more and to facilitate a broader use of hydrogen and develop technologies that will advance and help us just to do that. Although I'm not discussing a lot of my technologies, I want to stress that the Office of Fossil Energy has invested a considerable amount of resources to support development of hydrogen turbines, the solid oxide fuel cell, large-scale energy storage concepts, coal gasification systems with pre-combustion capture and the production of hydrogen fuel cells. Next slide, please. When we talk about re-imaging coal, our strategy is kind of threefold, and we work with industry, academia, and national labs. And what I mean is, first we look at materials discovery and design, developing mechanisms for chemical and thermal processing of coal to enhance the what we have in those carbons. And what I'm saying is using the coal and looking at ways to make graphene carbon dots, porous carbons, building structure materials. Also, in order to do that, we have to look and characterize the performance and what the cost of the carbon in the end product and its use and application. The second part is to analyze the market in the process and the environmental analysis. Market analysis of the coal compositions, how many jobs we can create, revenue generated, and what are the market barriers to these new carbon products. Understand the techno-economic analysis of coal in these processes that we're looking at, and also focus on the number of inventions that are coming out of these processes. And then also look at the life cycle of coal to products. And the last part of that would be, although we have used coal for many of years to develop and enhance what we call an American coal database. And this database is going to be coupled with geodata, CFD modeling, CFD tools on how to how beneficiated coal performs in power production facilities, and to also look at how our coal would perform in export markets. Next slide. As we look at the coal value chain, we in the United States have significant and quantities of domestic feedstocks. And what I'm saying is that we have a lot of coal, we have a lot of char, pitch, and liquids. We are learning the values and starting to understand better these coal-based feedstocks in producing low-defect graphene films, carbon nanosheets, graphene nanoflakes, graphene quantum dots, porous carbons, the coal foams, and coal-based materials constructions. We also have a significant program that is looking at the recovery of critical minerals from coals, critical minerals and rare earths. And we're looking at recovering those from the coal themselves, coal byproducts such as acid mine drainage, mining refuge. And this is in an effort to secure the United States independence, or at least reduce our imports of critical minerals. And lastly, we need to improve the fleet of existing plants. And we think that through our technologies that we have developed in gasification, that we can produce hydrogen at net zero or net negative, and produce other chemicals and fuels and power. Next slide, please. FE and industry have a real potential to leverage the ongoing work that has been going on in our programs, and to improve the economics of hydrogen production, both from natural gas, but also from coal biomass, coal waste plastic gasification with CCS to realize net CO2 emissions. We need to be conducting and understanding hydrogen transport, storage infrastructures, and R&D, and understand the materials and the geology, conducting resource assessments, and establishing lab and for hydrogen storage. Through our sister office, the Oil and Gas Program, we have a strong understanding of transport of fuels and storage of those fuels. So we think the FE lends itself well to resolving many of these issues that we're going to be facing. So characterizing regional geologies, infrastructural requirements, materials of construction for storage of hydrogen in geological formations such as salt domes, depleted oil reserves, is something that we are well suited for and have had years of experience in that. Developing, one of the areas that will need work is developing conversion technology such as catalysts and materials to process these chemicals, and to utilize hydrogen for added value products such as chemical products or even ammonia, the production of ammonia. Opportunities to improve the value proposition of hydrogen technology are dependent on the expanding hydrogen infrastructure, and to determine the application where hydrogen has a competitive business case. A targeted R&D that we have had for over the past 15 years can help accelerate and address many of those key issues that we will be facing to help transition to a hydrogen economy. Next slide. I think one of the areas when we talk about reimaging, but more importantly, innovative gasification, would be utilizing waste plastics. DOE is innovative in new approaches in gasification. Research on gasification processes that we're looking at are in reducing the cost. As Bima talked about, can we go to more modular type gasification systems, smaller systems that can, if you need more power, you can gang them together to achieve what you need to achieve. So we need to understand the feedstock, like waste plastics from various forms of biomass, have those burn in the gasifier, what are the issues we're going to be faced with. We need to understand ultra high pressure gasification for the production of hydrogen at pressure. Microwave is an area that we're doing extensive research in for gasification. So we need to understand microwave assisted gasification systems, how that can help us reduce the cost of hydrogen in the production of hydrogen, increase the production of hydrogen. Materials development. If we are going to store material, if we're going to store hydrogen, we need to understand the materials that we can store it in. We need to understand how we're going to transport hydrogen and what we need to look at as far as materials that will be used under these extreme conditions. Like I said earlier, we need to develop catalysts and other technologies to help us as we process our coals and our biomass and waste plastics. These efforts can allow us to use low-cost, local sources of biomass and waste plastic to reduce our feedstock costs. results, and it will result in a carbon neutral hydrogen production of hydrogen. And it will also, we also will see that if we go along this pathway, that will reduce our landfill burdens from our recyclables and non-recyclables, and provide a sustainable waste to energy option that we have. And with that, I would like to turn the time over to Jose Benitez, who will now be talking to us about creating opportunities with analysis.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can I be heard?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't speaking to myself. So yes, this is Jose Benitez, and I'm gonna be presenting the focus area 4 and research directions. We call this creating opportunities with analysis and engagements. And generally, this area is composed of 3 different subtopics that make it up. And the first one is analysis. In analysis, we refer to systems, economic, and environmental analysis as a whole of all the technologies that are being developed by the Office of Clean Coal and Carbon Management. And we also have a component, 2 components of engagement. The first one is the international component, where we're engaging with international organizations and helping with our expertise into these technology areas, so they can integrate that into their analysis and plans. And the other area, which we call partnership, or you can also call it domestic partnerships, we try to engage with government agencies, other federal agencies, kind of in the background of the government internal processes, and with industry. So I'm gonna go more in depth into each one of these areas. Could I have the next slide? So in terms of analysis, we have several components within this area that we're looking at. We mainly the first 2 in here, assess policy instruments and priorities and for clean energy policy development. That happens mostly through the intergovernmental process, where different government agencies create either policy instruments and priorities, or they're engaging in research and development. So we provide consultations with these other government agencies, and we provide the expertise in terms of how to look at these technologies from the market and policy kind of legal perspective, and how they fit into that framework. And we also look at the markets and look at the necessities to guide the R&D portfolio development within the office, and we look at what are those gaps in the market that needs to be filled. How can these different technologies that we're in the process of research and development are gonna transform in the future, and how do they fit into those future markets? And the way we do that is that we look at different models and expert analysis, and we see what those gaps are, where are the opportunities, which can be leveraged to get those deployments. We also model emerging technology impacts, so we determine what are potential economic and job impacts, and also impacts in the energy markets. Generally, we use models like NEMS and GCAM, and we are also actually starting to develop more capability using Plexos, which is power dispatch modeling. And we're starting to look at those questions as to how do these technologies fit into the future of those U.S. energy markets. Just as an example, as part of this strategic plan, if you look at page 55, you can see that one example of the one such work product that we have, and that will be an assessment on the historical benefits of the coal R&D program, and we developed that, and that's part of the supporting and documentation to the strategic plan. Next slide, please. We also have, we engage with international communities This is basically a snapshot of entities we engage with: IEA, the Carbon Sequestration Leadership Forum, APEC, and the Clean Energy Ministerial. And by the way, the Clean Energy Ministerial is being hosted by Saudi Arabia, and actually they are in the process of starting their meeting. And if you go to their website, you can actually see how that is developing, and you have a countdown timer to know when it actually starts. And we, as part of international engagement, part of what we do is to monitor and evaluate global energy markets. We look at what are the emerging technologies, what is the emerging demands for energy throughout those markets, and how those things are developing, and how could we help with our technology actually fill any potential gaps that might be needed. And so we keep that monitoring and evaluation of global markets to do that kind of assessment. And we also ensure that we bring the expertise from the Office of Clean Coal and Carbon Management, and also from our partners in this. We make sure that that knowledge is transferred into the international arena. And so when there's studies or policies or any other work of that nature in which they're seeking to define what's going to be that energy future for the world, and how can those economies develop, and they take into consideration actually the technologies that we're developing here in the US. So we proactively identify and track global R&D markets, and we leverage those international collaborations that we have, and we ensure that affordable coal energy systems and products are in those dialogues that happen. I also want to say we are also engaged with the IEA Global Greenhouse Gas Institute, um, with the IEA GHG effort, and with the Global CCS Institute. Next slide, please. We also have we also build partnerships, or we could call this domestic engagements. We actually have engagements internally within the Department of Energy and external to the Department of Energy. So in terms of internal engagements that we have, I can talk about engagements that we have with the Office of Artificial Intelligence and Technology. And there has been coordination in there with MFIX, and in terms of leveraging exascale computing to be able to do these very detailed modeling and simulations of things, of flow dynamic problems, like what you have in gasifiers and in other coal type technologies or fossil technologies. We also are engaging in the Grid Modernization Initiative, or GMI. GMI is a big effort by the Department of Energy between the 5 different program offices that will be fossil energy, energy efficiency and renewable energy, nuclear energy, Office of Electricity, and CSER, which is cybersecurity and resilience office. Between all the offices, we're actually seeking to fund different projects which address certain parts of the grid. And one thing I have to note is that when we talk about the grid, we're not just talking about the wires. We're talking about from the users all the way up to the sources of fuel, and we're looking at all of it as an integrated grid. We want to make sure that enabling technologies are actually being deployed, and to make sure that the grid is safe, reliable, and available when we need it. One more thing I wanted to say on this slide, we also have partnerships with other entities and organizations. Actually, one of the partnerships we have is with the USEA, and this is kind of a byproduct of that partnership. We also have partnerships with Kirk, NASIO, NARUC, NGA, and RECA, Southern States Energy Board, and likes, where we participate and try to make sure that they're aware of the technologies and analysis capabilities that we have available to help. So with that, I actually I'm gonna pass it to John Litinsky, and he's gonna be talking about next steps.
This is John Latinsky. Can you hear me? I'll assume that you can.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. So next step. So we've heard a lot about the strategic plan and what's in it from the 4 division directors. And if you look back from the last plan that was published a few years ago, you'll see there's some significant changes. But in terms of next steps, I mean, we look to update this every 2 years. It is truly developed across FE20 with input from all the staff as well as NETL and others. We look at what the changes in the program are. It builds on DOE's vision, so you can consider this kind of a waterfall from DOE down to the divisions all the way through all levels of fossil energy on what the strategic emphasis is going to be. The next step after that is we actually develop some strategic reports issued to supplement like the strategic vision that are kind of on an as-needed basis. We develop that with input via workshops. Just to give an example, we had 2 special reports that were developed previously from the last strategic plan, one on big data and machine learning, and advanced manufacturing. And both of those reports had had a significant impact on programs, but also you can see some of their influence on this year's strategic plan. So we assume that we'll be looking for input and hopefully have some other workshops in the next couple of years as we implement this strategic plan and plan for the next. So that's stakeholder feedback on this. We're also going to be looking for feedback on this plan itself. So kind of solicited via this workshop and other discussions, and even in the focused workshops that we have. Next slide, please. So if you want to see the full document, it's available here. Alex, I think you've already forwarded this link to everybody, but we encourage you to all take a look at it. Please review it, get us comments. We're interested. As again said, this is a working and a living document that will be updated in a few years, but it shows the current status and what really our emphasis are in the program. Next slide. So, I mean, this leads us into the discussion page, but I mean, I hope we gave you a really good, sense of where we're headed in fossil energy right now and what we're going to be focused on for the next couple of years. We'd like your, feedback on this plan either today or over the next coming weeks. Are there any specific questions? What's your initial reactions? Are there major gaps? Do you think fossil energy ought to be focused on something else? Is your company, working on something that you didn't see right now? Any major concerns? And then, suggestions for going forward. Again, we appreciate everyone's interest. We hope, you see that, we're committed to the mission. We're committed, and I think we all see as fossil energy having a fairly large future, especially if you look at some of the challenges that are going to be associated with decarbonizing the energy sector. If you start looking at scale, you can't do this without fossil energy. So again, we'll look forward to the discussion and your reactions. I would like to point out there's one person that's been driving these slides, that's Sarah Forbes, and she did a lot of work kind of organizing and writing and coordinating with everyone across FE20. So we really do appreciate all of her effort in helping to bring this document together. And this webinar with USDA. So again, thank you. Alex?
Thanks, John, and thank you to all of our speakers as well. This is just fantastic information, and really happy that we're able to share it with you. As a follow-up, the office will be soliciting the public's feedback regarding its strategic vision. If you would like to participate in this process, please let me know at akrauka@usda.org. Again, you can download a copy of the strategic vision at our event website, which I have entered into the chat. And we will also post a copy of the presentation and a recording of the webinar at that same event website. So now we'll move on to the Q&A portion of the webinar. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to enter them either into the chat or the Q&A. If possible, please mention the speaker who your question or comment is directed to. That can help. So with that, the first question is from Mark regarding earthquakes in Oklahoma. The question is, doesn't injection of produced waters in Oklahoma and the stimulation of earthquakes give you pause about injecting CO2 into the subsurface? Why wouldn't CO2 also lubricate and reactivate old faults to yield earthquakes?
Yeah, so great question. And so the response that I have is any projects that we're doing are going to be permitted through EPA, and whether that is, if you're specifically looking at something like Class 6, I would like to note that we've had Class 2 enhanced oil recovery projects that have been taking place for over 40 years. And, to my knowledge, those have not ever, or have not raised any issues. So I think with the proper characterization and the proper steps taking place to move forward and permit these projects, it can be done safely and without any issues. And we've seen this, beyond EOR. If you look at projects like Sleipner in Norway, that's been operating for over 20 years. It's a very manageable process. So I'm very confident in our ability to do this safely and securely.
And following up on that, Mark, regarding Class 6 well permitting, is there anything you can speak to regarding coordination with EPA?
Yeah, so Jose and actually Sarah can probably speak a little bit more to that, but we collaborate closely with EPA when they were developing the Class 6 rules. A lot of the as DOE being a research organization, a lot of the things that we're doing are developing not just technologies, but knowledge as well, and sharing that knowledge with our stakeholders, and that includes all our other sister and brother agencies, and that includes EPA. So when they were looking at developing the Class 6 permitting rules and the guidelines, they relied on a lot of the information developed through DOE-funded projects.
Great, thank you.
I don't know if Jose or Sarah have anything else to maybe add to that.
Yeah, I can add. Generally with our we sustain engagements with EPA. Obviously, we have gone to our government consultations, and we like to share the different advances and developments, both in technologies and also on analytical methods that we have. Generally, there can be two types of engagements with EPA or any other agency for that purpose. There is the formal route where when there is the development of new regulations, we, as part of the process, we have this intergovernmental commenting process where we receive regulations before obviously they're published, and we get to see what is being done, and depending on our knowledge and what we know, we get to make comments and engage in those conversations with the agencies. And so that's more of a formal engagement. On an informal basis, we do have contacts at different government agencies. We talk to each other, and we discuss some issues, specifically in Class 6. And there is an ongoing group that we have in which we any potential things that are of interest in terms of either taking care of new things within that program, or flexibilizing regulations, or making things a little bit easier with the technologies and tools that we have.
And just one other point to add, I do also want to note that we have the Archer Daniels Midland project in Illinois that has had a Class 6 permit for the industrial project, which has been operating for over 3 years. And then prior to that project, the industrial project, we had a field test project at the same site that operated also for several years prior to that industrial process as well. And that was injecting in saline formation. And the ADM industrial project's injecting 1 million tons per year.
Great, thank you both. And Jose, going back to you, and I think you covered this already a little bit, but could you, I guess, expand on the international collaboration that is occurring, planned, or envisioned by your team in the office?
Yeah, sure. So, oh, I'm having some feedback, I guess. Okay, so we engage with international organizations, and some of them were in this slide. And obviously, that's not a comprehensive list. And generally, we engage in terms of trying to explain fossil technologies and specifically coal and carbon management technologies and how they could be integrated into analysis or policies and that are being developed. And we also participate in some analysis and programs, and for example from IEA, and generally if they develop any new analysis, we receive drafts as one of the IEA member countries, and we have the chance to actually review, provide comments, and we also provide experts to engage as needed. Actually, I have to say, right now, our director for the analysis and engagement divisions, he's actually going to share one of these sessions for the Clean Energy Ministerial meeting. So that's why he couldn't be with us here today. And he's engaging on that, and they're talking about financing of CCUS. And so and the engagement is kind of on the side of reviewing materials being developed by international agencies and providing that expert feedback, and also engaging in terms of kind of boots on the ground and being in those meetings. I also have to say that we engage in terms of coal and carbon management, but we also have a sister division here, oil and gas, that does benefits analysis work, and also they engage and they reach out for in terms of engagements.
Great, thank you, Jose. The next question is directed at John regarding hydrogen and the work that the Office of Fossil Energy is doing. What kind of coordination is needed or has been done between FE and the Office of Nuclear Energy, or EERE for that matter? I know we hosted a webinar with EERE on hydrogen. So if you could just clarify kind of the coordination between the different offices within DOE regarding hydrogen.
So the number of different activities going on between the different offices. I guess I'll highlight one that is the hybrid energy systems. So we're looking at reversible solid oxide fuel cells, and you could use those to produce hydrogen, or you could swing them back to produce electricity. There's a collaboration between FE funding NETL and Idaho National Lab that's also looking at using fuel cells to produce hydrogen when there's excess electricity from nuclear plants. Again, it's similar like at a coal plant where you might have excess electricity as this, it's kind of been sitting there in sprinting reserves, or, even if you're looking to just take electricity off the grid and make hydrogen, for storage and potentially, use in the coal or gas fired turbines. So there is some technical discussions there. On the EERE side, we actually have a lot of discussions and collaboration. We're working together to define what our roles and responsibilities are, and there's lots of areas for collaboration. Our focus, has primarily been on bulk power production, transport, storage, and use of that hydrogen, maybe in a poly generation plant where you've got associated, needs for, say, shifting from electricity to chemicals or fuels, or there's just an associated chemical production facility. So ours is really on the bulk side. Theirs is more on electrolysis, providing for the transportation infrastructure, but they do have a lot of activities in kind of the infrastructure that's required, to develop what we would call hydrogen economy. I'm not sure that term's actually used as much anymore, but to enable hydrogen to be pervasive through the economy. I did see one comment in here. I'll just add on, where does storage fit? Specifically in that area, we're really, EERE has definitely has been doing a lot of work in storage. A lot of that work has been maybe on the smaller side from what we would consider necessary for bulk electricity production. So maybe in the hundreds of kilograms to a ton, in cylinders and things like that for distribution and use in maybe transportation sector. Ours is looking at, if you take I use this example a couple times today, actually. You take a 500 megawatt gas-fired turbine, you need 500 to 700 tons of hydrogen a day to fire that system. That's a completely different storage, challenge than, say, a refueling station for a car. So ours is more on the very, very large scale systems that you would need either for geologic hydrogen storage or on-site storage at a power plant, where you need to actually have large amounts of hydrogen to actually run a gas turbine or, for emergency backup. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that was great, John. Thank you.
Sorry. I also wanted to say that we also engage with nuclear energy through the GMI Green Modernization Initiative, and we actually have a project right now and that we're funding between the two offices called Tightly Coupled Hybrids, in which they're looking at that integration between nuclear and electrolysis, and we're looking at hydrogen technologies on our side, and we're creating kind of next generation models to see how those technologies and their dynamics actually incorporate to the grid. And so we have, at least on the analysis side, we have we're looking both at the same on some of the same things in terms of analytics, and we're doing that together.
Great, thank you for that clarification, Jose. Mark, here's another question for you. What are the cost goals for capture costs, and how much progress has been made in reducing those costs?
Yes, so our cost goals are to reduce the costs down to 30% below the current state of the art, which equates to about $30 per ton captured. And that's looking at it for a coal-fired power plant. That's what we're kind of using as our base for our work right now. And if you look at, say, where the current state of the art was, say, 7 to 8 years ago, you're probably somewhere in that $60 to $80 range. So our goal is to go from that, those ranges down to $30 per ton. We think we're probably around the $40 to $45 per ton range right now with some of our more advanced technologies. But they still need to be proven out at larger scale. But we are seeing reductions coming down that cost curve.
Great. And then another question. Japan is looking to blend carbon-free ammonia as a feedstock in conventional coal power plants, reducing about 20% of CO2 emissions immediately. Has DOE looked into this pathway? Coal power plants are already equipped to handle ammonia for SCR applications. I guess that question is kind of a free for all. Anyone who wants to take it on.
Maybe that BMI and Regis follow in on that one. But yes, actually, ammonia is kind of one of those attractive fuel or potential fuels for the if we can take hydrogen and make a carbon-free fuel like ammonia. It has its challenges, but maybe I'll let Bima and Regis talk about that. But it's definitely something that we're interested in terms of energy storage as well as an alternative carbon-free fuel. Regis or Bima, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was going to say, John, this is Regis, that yes, it's certainly something that we're looking at. It does have its many challenges, and that's what we have to start to address if we're going to move along in that pathway and evaluate that. But it is something that we are considering. Bima, you have anything? You're on mute.
Bima, I've unmuted you if you'd like to add anything to that.
Oh, I was talking to myself. I apologize. I thought you were on me. No, I think what Regis covered is about right, and he had a slide which actually speaks to that really well. And then I think, if you share the slides with him, that particular one that he had kind of talks about it quite extensively on this.
Great, thank you, Bima. And as a reminder, we will share slides on our event page, so you can look for that. Regis, since we have you on the line, would DOE FE be interested in applied programs to link the REE programs to establish business cases and supply chain for products? The AMO, or Advanced Manufacturing Office, issued a FOA specific for magnets, but the turbine industry can really benefit from hot gas path components and coatings. This could help establish the business case for investment done.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out where the question is.
I guess whether FE is interested, or maybe they're already doing this in applied programs to link REE programs to establish business cases in the supply chain for products, and whether they're doing any work with AMO.
Absolutely, we are. We have had and are in discussions and collaboration with other offices to discuss the magnets and how we can help produce and generate materials. We're also doing a lot of work, and we do not only within DOE but also across the agencies with Defense Department and their large. They recently had a opportunity out for neodymium iron magnets that they had put out. So we also have been talking to them about that, as we have been also talking with industry to see what it's going to take to reestablish a magnet industry in the United States. But yes, there's a lot of cross-office collaboration within DOE, because the critical minerals are of such importance both to the White House and to our secretary.
Great, thank you, Regis.
Sure.
I had a request to unmute Angelos. Angelos, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry about that. I had problems with the computer, so I heard the whole thing. So just keep on asking the questions, and if I can help out, we can do it. I can.
Okay.
I will.
Perfect. Let's see. We have a lot of questions coming in. Unfortunately, I think due to time, we won't necessarily be able to answer all of them. However, we can, if you have a question and you don't feel that it was answered, please feel free to send it in after the webinar, and we can connect you with the correct person. Have another question here. We'll take a couple more, and then we will probably shut things down. In the 2010 to 2012 timeframe, DOE invested in liquid organic hydrogen carriers. What is the status of that initiative? LOHC is being touted as a breakthrough technology for storage and logistics in European hydrogen initiatives. LOHC can use existing petroleum pipelines to transport hydrogen, saving significant costs.
John, do you know about that?
Yeah, no, I specifically, no, but we're looking at different liquid carriers for hydrogen, just because if you can get to a more energy dense fuel, hydrogen itself does not carry a lot of energy, and it's just as hydrogen itself. So if we can change that to a more liquid or a more dense fuel, then obviously yes, and we can use the existing infrastructure. So yes, it's something we're going to be interested in. You know, we just completed an RFI. Part of that RFI for hydrogen included a number of different topics, including you know, energy storage and putting hydrogen into other forms. So obviously we'll look into that, and I'm sure we'll be interested if there's you know, potential in the technology. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. With that, I think we're gonna call it a day. So thank you everyone who attended. Thank you most especially to all of our speakers. Again, this has been incredibly informative and really exciting to see the future of coal and clean coal and carbon management, all the great work that the office is doing and continues to do. Again, the presentation and a recording of the webinar, as well as the strategic vision document itself, is posted to our event page, which I entered into the chat earlier. We will also resend a link when we send our follow-up emails. If you are interested in giving feedback or participating in the process of giving feedback to DOE on this strategic vision document, please let me know, and we'll make sure to try and include you on that process. Please make sure to keep a lookout for more emails from the consensus program, where we will also be advertising the feedback process. Again, thank you to everyone for joining and participating, and we hope you have a great rest of your week.
And Alex, I'd like to thank you and EPA for organizing and facilitating this for us.
It's our pleasure. Love to do it. All right. Have a good one, everyone.